Welcome to another series of Education One. My name is Sam Cephas. I'm the host of Education One. This week we have an important guest, a guest that I know very well. Matter of fact, he's one of the board members of MC Squared Technologies, Inc. and New England Talent Search. His name is Dale Gustafson, and he's this week going to show you the statistical data of the educational system in Connecticut, and he's going to point out the towns that right now we have problems in, that is actually holding down the educational system in Connecticut. Dale, welcome.
Hey, Sam, it's good to be here.
All right. We've been doing this for over 12 years. You've been with me for a lot of years. You and Muhammad Ahmed, Pastor Wade Lanier, Mrs. Williams, Stan McCauley, that actually host this show. Tell us the problems, exactly what's going on in Connecticut in the educational system.
Well, the initial problem that even we all talk about is the fact that the graduation rate in Connecticut is not good.
Okay.
That statistics that I have gotten from the State Department of Education here in Connecticut will say that even if you're taking all 169 towns and averaging it all out, one out of five, in other words, nearly 20%, do not graduate from high school in the 4-year period that they certainly would normally graduate within.
So you have eight counties, and you have 169 towns.
We have 169 towns.
How many towns out of 169 towns of actually high schools? And we really, in MC Square, we track from 8th to 10th grade.
Correct.
What are the towns really having the most problems? What is the percentage? How many? 10, 20, 30? How many towns did you think?
Well, not in terms of percentage, but in our own studies, we have noticed that there are at least 12 to 15 towns that are having great difficulties. We're not going to be talking about all 12 to 15 today. We're going to be concentrating on the worst 6 as defined by the State Board of Education.
Let's take a look at one of the towns that
and even before that, we can look a little bit at how these counties line up. And
so you have 8 counties out of
we have 8 counties, and the top 6 are within at least 4 of those counties. We have Hartford, that's obviously in Hartford County. We have
which is the capital.
Which is the capital.
Okay.
We have New Britain, which is still within our county.
Okay.
We go a little bit to the southwest, and we come to Bridgeport.
Okay.
And that's in Fairfield County.
Okay.
And then we go into New Haven, which is in Middlesex County.
Okay.
Yes, I believe I'm correct on that.
Exactly.
Well, no, it's actually New Haven County. I'm sorry. New Haven is in New Haven County.
Right.
And then we can go all the way over to New London, which is in New London County, and then up to Norwich, which is also there in New London County. Those are the top 6 as defined right now. As of 2010, I have to say that all the statistics that I've gotten are as of the end of the 2010 year.
Okay.
It takes about a year to get them all put together. So
now, it's obvious in Hartford, but let's look at New London, and you know a lot about New London. And we have to look at minority kids, Black and Latino and American Indian, which you know how my family's mixed. What is the percentage of white and minority kids in that town? What is the percentage on that?
In terms of the actual percentage, I don't have all these statistics memorized. But what I would like to say, there are some dramatic statistics that show up here, and I have them with me.
Okay.
And they're in alphabetical order, so that if I work this through right, I should be able to find them.
Okay.
New London School District.
Okay.
There, in terms of the graduation rate, first of all, which is what we're talking about, they have a graduation rate as of 2010, which was just slightly above 65%, which meant 35% were not graduating.
Okay.
Of those, we have Hispanic individuals who did not graduate at actually a slightly higher rate than all of the students, at a slightly greater rate of not graduating. They were only at 60%, which meant 40% did not graduate.
Okay.
as opposed to the non-Hispanic, who were at nearly 70%. So, I mean, I can't tell. New London is not a large school system per
Right.
se.
Okay.
And they're only really counting one school, namely New London High School, which has approximately, well, again, in terms of the total number of students,
Okay.
because the state statistics not only deal with the high schoolers, they're dealing with all grades from K all the way up to 12.
Right.
The New London system has within it slightly over between 3,000 and 4,000 students, so it's not a large school district.
Do you have anything that there's any charter schools or magnet schools in that area, or that hasn't come to be yet in New London County?
There are, I do know personally, because I have grandchildren who are attending
Okay.
magnet and charter schools.
Right.
But those particular institutions in this particular report
Right. It's not there.
were not tracked.
Okay. That's phenomenal.
Now,
No.
if you come to the Hartford statistics, they are tracked.
Okay.
And generally speaking, I can say that the graduation rates ultimately from the high schools.
Right.
Well, here's the other deal. In New London, they do not have a charter high school per se.
Okay.
They're working on some things,
Okay.
which are not yet totally developed.
Okay.
They have some magnet schools, but they're for lower levels. My grandchildren are in the lower levels.
Okay.
So when talking high school, that's the reason New London does not have it at this point. But there are many in Hartford.
Right.
Because we know
Right.
where they are and who they are.
Right.
And when you compare the graduation statistics in those particular kinds of schools, they are higher.
Okay.
So they have had their effect. But you and I have talked a lot about the fact that both magnet and charter schools are drawing students from other than Hartford communities.
Right.
They're coming to those schools from
Right.
many other communities.
Right.
Which may have an impact on why that graduation
So
rate
rate
is
is-
higher.
Now,
Yeah.
do you have anything on the truancy and the dropout? Do you have anything on that in the New London, or just the statistics are skewed also?
Yeah, that would be the same in terms of those
Okay.
statistics for them. The truancy, and I've been learning data about truancy. A student is considered a truant if they have missed 10 days unexcused
Okay.
during a school year.
Okay.
10 days unexcused during a school year classifies them as a truant.
Okay.
In the Hartford school system, which I was looking at specifically, both boys and girls who are in that truant category are missing 28 to 29 days, a full month.
Full month.
A full month of school out of basically a 10-month year.
Right.
Right?
Right. That's a lot of days.
That's a lot of days. And the truancy situation is one where, in terms of the studies that have been done, experts in the field are suggesting that the truant ought to be able to be picked out much, much, much earlier in their educational life.
I need to ask you this. This is just for the record, because anyone that actually views this show
Yeah.
know that we're by the numbers of information. Where do you get your information from?
Well, I've read articles from the Connecticut Mirror.
Okay.
I've gotten statistics from CONCAN,
Okay.
which has done a lot of statistical
Right.
work.
They're big time.
Absolutely. And then there's a committee called the Achievement Gap Education Committee
Right.
that's under the State Department of Education.
Right.
And they've had several hearings.
Okay.
And at those hearings, they have invited many, many, many groups who want to add their insights into the committee.
And quite naturally, we know some people. We know some people.
We know some of the people on those committees, and
Right.
we also know that those committees have the written documents. So some of the information I was pulling from those testimonies
Right.
that were being made that I found under the committee report.
Right.
So these are not conjured up just out of my head. These are statistics that are real and absolutely important for our state. In all instances, and I guess this is the thing that really hit me between the eyes, is that we're, as MC2, trying to deal with 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders
Right.
at the end of the line. in all instances, these problems are able to be seen much, much earlier. And in fact, some of the recommendations will say that a lot of preschool work is really important in order to stop this graduation gap at the end of the line. So many of the testimonies to the Achievement Gap Committee were talking about what's being done at the early stages of education. We got into this because of truancy, you mentioned.
Right, exactly.
And there are those who are saying that truancy ought to be able to be picked out by teachers even. Okay. When you start seeing an individual student who maybe was involved for a few weeks but then suddenly is trailing off and kind of in his or her own world, there should be some specific looking at that by the teacher to see what's causing that particular individual to withdraw as they seem.
Because you and I viewed a program on PBS about a month ago.
That's correct.
Out of Texas.
That's right.
And it was unique how they did a different twist to it. And out of all the kids, I think they lost 2 kids out of the whole thing. They just could not actually draw them in. Something happened, and it's mostly on a social economic means towards what happened. Because really, the child was coming to school, but socioeconomically, there was no parent, no housing. They was living on the street.
And they were living on the street.
They were living on the street in an abandoned home.
And you mentioned socioeconomic. Of all the factors in Connecticut that seem to cause the greatest problems for the students in terms of graduating, in terms of achievement gap, in terms of dropping out, in all of that, the one that is the highest in terms of contributing to the problem is the socioeconomic. And that's one thing that CONCAN, in some of their information, really pointed out quite dramatically. I mean, it's just a graph.
This is something when we started MC Square with the New Temple of God. Pastor Wade Lanier, she devoted her whole life into, she says, Brother Sam, we can teach a child. But when you look at the background of the child, this is something that God has to actually intervene and help us. And this is something, when she died last year, that's how we had to reform of how we thought at MC Square, because we had to keep the ball rolling.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to get back. We're going to pay some bills. But we get back. We'll look at the Hartford school system, and then we'll come. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Time passes quickly.
Time passes quickly.
My name is Brian Johnson, and I'm here today to talk about the challenge. I guess what I would like to know from America or the Hartford area is what is the problem and what is the solution? Which is bigger when we discuss the challenge? What we're trying to figure out what's wrong or what we're trying to solve? Is it a philosophical difference that we have amongst our people, or is it a practical difference? Throughout our neighborhoods, many of us can't read or write. If we can't read or write, that prevents us from thinking critically. So we are at a disadvantage coming into this game. So we challenge you to think about some of those things. And through the course of our challenge, we're going to present you with some information that we hope gets you to think about yourself and the community in which you live, and what your role is and how you can help affect change in that community.
Hi, I'm Lori, your host of Up to Date, a calendar show that features all the greatest activities in current events that are taking place in our greater Hartford community. In the coming week, all you have to do is visit accesstv.org, and you will be able to find out what's going on without having to look all over to find it. We'll have it all there for you. So get ready, there's a lot of information to share. Grab a paper, pen, and sit back, because you know you're going to love it, because now you won't have to look to find all this information. We got it covered.
Welcome back to Education 1 on the second part of our statistical data of Connecticut, educational part of Connecticut. We have with us Dale Gustafson. He is actually executive board member of MC Square Technologies, and he's actually the data man, we call him, at MC Square. The first half we looked at the overall of New London County. This part we're going to be looking at exactly how Harford County educational system works. And since we was grandfathered in, Mr. Dale, from Arnie Duncan, because we know we have a major part right now, that Race to the Top fund. And since we lost out of the 3.5 years when Barack Obama had been in office, and he's still running again, today's election day. Tell me the overall of Harford educational system.
Well, and you mentioned Race to the Top. There was some statistics that I saw that indicated that in terms of getting federal dollars to assist in Connecticut education, now this is statewide,
Right.
again through our applications to the feds,
Right.
but that Connecticut has received something in the order of maybe $6 to $8 per student over the course of all this. But that's compared to Massachusetts, that was getting something in the order of $300 and some per student,
Yes.
and Rhode Island that was getting even double that, $600 to $800 per student
So what are we doing?
from the feds.
What are we doing wrong?
Well, apparently we're not giving the right kinds of program possibilities to
Right.
the feds in terms of their analysis. We've been behind the 8 ball there for several years, and we know there were some other submissions that were made, but it was pointed out simply because Massachusetts and Rhode Island are so close,
Okay.
our neighboring states, and they were getting tremendous federal support for their school programs. We have a lot of catching up to do in that respect.
I don't know, a lot of people know that Massachusetts was the first state to start a magnet school. First state.
Okay.
They had Peter Lynch from Fidelity, and some other people actually spearheaded that project. So when you look at Massachusetts, even though they call it the Commonwealth,
Right.
these
right.
guys have Harvard and MIT
Yes.
and BC, BU, Berkeley, you know, so you have Northeastern, you have top-notch schools in Massachusetts. And I'm not saying that Connecticut do not have good schools, but Massachusetts have the great schools. And I have to look at it that way. Tell us some data on Hartford. What's going on in Hartford?
Well,
school
and here's another interesting fact that I just want to suggest. An individual has done a study about the economic loss
Okay.
that a state has when there are high dropout rates that approach the 20%, which we said one out of 5.
1 out of 5.
And the statistics were showing that if even half of those who dropped out were actually graduating, if there could be some good one-to-one programs somehow that would keep half of those dropouts from dropping out,
Right.
so that they would graduate, it would add millions of dollars to the economy.
Okay.
The Connecticut economy.
Right.
Just because they would be out there able to get jobs and or go on to higher education, which right now they're not doing.
Okay.
It would add to our economy. It would in their lifetime as an individual, it would add $9,000 a year
Okay.
for them in terms of their own personal earnings.
That's real money.
And that's real money.
Right.
So the fact that we are losing individuals at 18 and 19 years of age, and many of them, of that 20% that drops out, 12% of that, 12% doesn't go back to school at all.
Okay.
Some of them are still trying to hang in there, and they continue on with coursework. They maybe are able to get a certificate of attendance, for instance, that they've been going to school, and they're able to keep moving on with the help that is still available to them, if they wish to have it.
I have to ask this question because this
Yeah.
question always brought up, and this is always going to continue. The data that you have, who is the biggest group subject between truancy and dropout?
Well, again, if you're going ethnically,
Right.
but again, I want to underscore that one's racial background is not the primary determiner here.
Right.
It's the socioeconomic one that is, and that can be black, white, green, or red, as you always like to say. You know?
Right.
It can be any individual. But if you're talking about ethnically,
Right.
the greatest gap right now is with the Hispanic,
Okay.
and then the second largest is with the black.
Okay.
And I'm not, I suppose what I've been reading is that there are certain traits within the Hispanic families and their whole culture that at this point, most of them are bilingual, which also is another aspect that has to impact this entire education learning thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
A learning factor of language.
Very definitely.
Okay.
And getting back to the socioeconomic, though,
Right.
another individual has done a study that was saying that within Connecticut, if you want to rent a home,
Right.
or rent an apartment, not a home, just rent an apartment and have enough money to legitimately carry on with the rest of your family in terms of their needs of clothing and food and transportation and so forth. The point at which you must be earning annual income is at $48,000 a year.
That's minimum.
Yeah.
And even though
To do that,
that's not even close to what Connecticut is really about.
that is not close.
Right.
To most, there's been a stagnation on the bottom end. What used to be true before for inner city people is even getting worse in terms of the dollars that they have to work with. So if you're looking just from a housing point of view, we've had the great Sandy hurricane that came through, and now many are homeless in New York City and in New Jersey and so forth. Well, we have people right here almost all the time that are right on the edges of being homeless.
Let me ask you this now. If I went to the superintendent of schools in Hartford and I said to her that let's do something, a pilot, just in dropout and truancy, how do you think she's going to take this?
Well, one would hope very positively, because by the statistics I've been reading, if we can at least pick up some of this dropout percentage,
Right.
and get them to graduate,
Right.
and increase their earning powers and so forth,
Right.
that would be of great benefit to the community. Not only to Hartford per se, but to the families of which they are a part.
I want to touch upon something that is actually statistically, but actually what we're doing right now. In the next 2 or 3 minutes, I want the viewers to know about the Manchester Project and why you convinced the board at MC Square to tackle the Manchester Project.
Well, in terms, again, of all of our goals, and I might as well be straight out, we were trying to do this very thing within Hartford, and there are lots of roadblocks in Hartford.
Yep.
I mean, we are a relatively new entity,
Right.
and new entities are not received very easily within Hartford. Manchester is a different story. We had asked several of the politicians who come from Manchester what they thought about the possibilities of coming to Manchester with the program that we provide. And every one of them that we spoke to said they thought Manchester was a great place because it was basically a self-contained community. It has its industrial base. It has its mixed community in terms of the high school. I should mention that dynamic, which is very interesting. Manchester as a community is 80% white and 20% minority, maybe 75-25 now.
Right, okay.
But it's right in that area. Yet the high school is literally a 50-50 split
Okay.
between white and minority. So the circumstances that we could presumably be facing in Manchester would be very similar to the circumstances that we'd be facing in any inner city area in Connecticut.
Out of the 8 counties.
Any of them out of the 8 counties.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that if when the program gets fully underway and with the success that we know will occur,
Right.
then we have a prototype
Okay.
that we could then start bringing to other communities in our state.
Now, we have actually spent a lot of time and energy targeting the 15 plus towns.
That's right.
We've been in the 15 plus towns.
Yeah, and you yourself have been in many more than that.
Many more than that. And the crazy part about this whole
Yeah.
thing is, and the viewers may know this, may not know this, out of the 169 towns, really, even the 15 towns that are the worst out of the 169 towns, they really don't work together. Politically, there's a problem.
No, right.
And
One other interesting factor that I would want to mention, Hartford has anywhere from 110 to 120 of its residents, students, who go to suburban schools.
okay,
Now, this is another statistic,
okay,
but what I'm pointing out by this statistic, and especially because I saw information from, this would not relate to Hartford, but to New Haven, Branford and West Hartford have received within their school systems many urban inner city kids. And yet this gap that we talk about in the urban areas continue, even in the suburban schools where these students go. So that simply having them arrive in a suburban community does not, in and of itself, mean that they may raise their standard some, but the gap
it's still there.
remains the same, almost.
So we're talking about
Yeah.
funding coming to per child is anywhere between 14 and 16,000
That's correct.
per child.
Yeah.
We're looking at a child at actually some not even at 2.0,
Right.
and you're looking at a minority or Hispanic child or American Indian that more than likely won't succeed or will drop out of high school.
Is still a grave possibility, yeah.
That
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
Connecticut is one of the the richest states, and it's the insurance capital.
Exactly.
Connecticut is Hartford's the insurance capital, but it's still Connecticut's the insurance capital.
Right.
And we
Right.
have this disparity between white and actually minority
Right.
that actually
Right.
is not succeeding. And what really upsets me is that they know that this is out there. It's something's not done. And we're spending millions and millions of dollars through Chef O'Neill when that case went down.
And that's why a lot of this is going on, because
Right.
of Chef O'Neill. The
Right.
open choice ideas.
The open
and
choice.
It used to be Project Concern
Right,
many
right,
years ago,
right.
when
And
my kids were in school.
Right. I wasn't here at that time. I was in
Right.
New York. But
Right.
but the crazy part about it is it comes down to politics and money.
Yeah. One thing that I just heard about within the last couple of days
Right.
is a new book that's out. It's called The New Jim Crow.
Okay.
It's written by a young woman who has been in the Justice Department, also worked as a law clerk for one of the Supreme Court justices and so forth. She's done a study about the fact that the war on drugs, which is kind of the beginning of this new Jim Crow possibility here. And I don't know how it affects Connecticut. I mean, there are statistics for throughout the United States, but how it works in Connecticut, that should probably be looked at. But the new Jim Crow is something where they just set up the roadblocks, and check cars that are coming through for drugs or alcohol or whatever, and especially if they find someone with marijuana, you're immediately in trouble.
Right.
And what has happened apparently, and this is from the federal point of view, if the police are able to pin a a charge on some individuals who are oftentimes from our poorer neighborhoods, and start presumably ramping up the possibilities of how that charge could expand into other types of charges, and then giving the opportunity to that individual to plea bargain, which by the very fact of doing it is admitting that you're somehow a felon
Right.
at that point,
Right.
even though you may not be. There's something about that that has been insidious in terms of breaking up the families. Particularly, we're talking about one-on-one opportunities. We're talking about the fact of having parents around to help the kids at all levels. And we have this new Jim Crow deal, which is working in the exactly opposite direction.
We have less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Let the viewers know what MC Squared can do.
Okay. MC2 is there to provide after-school and Saturday programming for normally 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. We're assuming that if they've made it that far, we want them to continue all the way to graduation. We want them to be prepared for either going on to further education in college or have a gainful employment position so they can be a good member of our society. That's our focus. We can drop that level to 9th grade or 8th grade, but we're trying to deal with the high end of that. And incidentally, one thing very interesting about the Manchester project is there are some people who are really very, very interested in that, in terms of a continuum from preschool all the way to high school.
We're going to pick that up a couple of months from now. We're going to bring you back in a
Yep.
couple of months to look at the other towns that we didn't talk about, the Bridgeports, the Stanfords,
Yep.
even the Torringtons. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of work out there to be done. I'm pretty sure you're going to go out there and keep pounding the pavement. And thanks for doing what you're doing for the last, I don't know how many years you've been
Well,
going with the board.
Eternity.
Eternity. We're going to see you guys next week of Education One. Thanks for tuning in, and I see you on the internet. God bless.